Hello everyone, and welcome to Gamed. This is the fifth game in our series of 6 games. Almost at the end now. This month, we had two new team members working with us, Varun and Devanshu, who helped us with making this game. And the four of us together made I Quit. Well, it's written as AI Quit, but you get it. I Quit. A sneaky game with a tiny robot trying to escape the drudgery of daily life in a pointless factory. Because we had two people on team who worked with 3D, we wanted to leverage that and do something in 3D this time. We started with a very elaborate idea of having multiple bodies to switch through in a stealth game with many additional mechanics on top of it. But since we just had a month, we ended up with something much simpler. Alright, so let's start at the beginning. Whenever we start games, we usually have an idea before getting into it on what type of gameplay we want. With this game, the one thing that we were sure about is that we wanted to make a stealth game. We took inspiration from games like Mark of the Ninja, Volume, Invisible Ink, Shadow Tactics, and many more. We knew from seeing these games that the setting we base our game in will inspire what our character can do. We started our conversations with the most elaborate ideas. A sentient alien captured in a lab, transferring consciousness to multiple robots, which all have different abilities, and using that to move around and escape the lab and get back to the mothership. We had grand ideas of towering futuristic lab setup with a gorgeous solar punk aesthetic, and we even tried some gameplay in that setup. Ultimately, while playing it, we realized that we needed to streamline the story, so we scrapped the idea of having a consciousness transfer and just stuck to having a single robot. Our world and our aesthetic is super cartoony, and one of the first things that we came up with for this world was an image of a robot happily living his life freely. We worked our way backwards from that, and if the robot is super happy in the end, how can we make him the most miserable in the beginning? So the game begins with the robot working on the assembly line, doing something pointless, completely meaningless, like packing boxes. We wanted to make the player feel a bit of connection with the robot as the game begins, so we start with a close-up camera. As the player moves the character around, we zoom out, giving more of the context to the space. We wanted to communicate that this is a monotonous and boring life, the same thing day in, day out. The factory should feel dry and boring, warming a bit more as you move to the warehouse. We added tiny elements like posters, decals, etc., which helped us keep the color scheme relatively simple and still make the world feel real. Ultimately, our story turned out to be about the grand escape of this robot. From the bottom floors of the assembly line through a maze-like warehouse, up to the office, and then up to the roof off in the boss's helicopter. We wanted a story that would give players a variety of places to explore, and something that would give us multiple places to create in our levels. As we started making the game and experimenting with the mechanics, we started with multiple ideas about how the enemy should behave, how the player should be, how the space should look or feel like. What can the player do? Like having the player transfer their intelligence to a toaster, which could ding and distract the enemies, or to a tiny Roomba that could go from under the desks. While the idea was definitely interesting, after trying a little bit with it, we realized that we would need a lot more levels and a lot more experimentation to fully explore the mechanics. So we had to ditch the platforming mechanics and the multiple characters, because that also came with the added challenge of how the player will transfer between the characters. Generally, a mechanic that is very common, almost stable in any stealth game, is a distraction mechanic. The player will be given some way to interact with the guards to disrupt their patterns. Our earlier level trials included distraction mechanics and we experimented with some ideas there. But ultimately we decided to try and make a couple of levels that don't need any distraction mechanics. We have two different kinds of enemies. The guards that have a view cone and a sound detection area, and the magnetic drones that have a circular area under them. And we decided that probably making puzzles that need clever navigation might just be interesting enough. And they did end up being interesting enough. While the first level is more of a tutorial, the second level is the one where the player actually finds the freedom to play around and experiment with how they want to play. Maybe play safe and just follow the path of the drone enemy, or maybe cut in between. Having multiple approaches for the same problem gives the game a bit of an arcade feel, which also gave us the idea for having the final level as the boss run, where The Botman is running after you. Once we had this bit of level 2 working, we knew that the core mechanical loop of the game was working. The game felt fun just in terms of moving the character around, and it had a mix of speedy and precision gameplay. It is this part of making games that is the most fun and the most unpredictable, when the mechanics take their own shape, and in a way, the game finds its own path through a web of infinite possibilities. And with this, we present to you I Quit. To say that this game had a lot of challenges going in would be an understatement. Having two more people on the team is awesome, and the game looks as good as it does because of Varun and Devanshu being around. But 3D also added additional layers of challenges in terms of making the game itself. But in the end, we loved making the game, and we learned so many things from it. Many thanks to Varun and Devanshu for being a part of the team in this game, and with this, we are done with 5 out of 6 games. Next one is going to be the last one. Exciting times! Link to this and our older games are in the description. Thanks a lot for watching and playing. We would love to hear your thoughts. See you next time.